we have a roster change in
Yes.
the Minnesota Rokkr camp. And the news is that GodRx, who was definitely one of Minnesota's better performing players on LAN, has been subbed out for the playoffs. In comes Exceed, who coach Saint and the assistant coach as well, in a video on the Rokkr's official Twitter account, basically said that he injects some youth, some excitement, and also some speed to the team. My first question to you about this news, though, Emily, is it too little too late?
I mean, so on the one hand, this is like the perfect time to make a change because this is your last push to champs to see how much money you can earn at the end of the year for bragging rights. Like obviously, I don't think anyone wants to do poorly ever. Whenever I talk to COD pros, like the money is actually always secondary, and I think a lot of that is just because a lot of these guys came up at a time when you were getting paid like 25, maybe like $500 is amazing. But I think that it's been a long online season for the Rokkr, right? Like they have not looked good since the swap. They've talked about this at length. I know Saint talked to you about this on Coach's Corner about their struggles to have everyone in the same area, and also internet struggles, like mindset struggles and adjusting to being online. And they haven't looked the same, despite the fact that I actually think, like, raw talent wise, GodRx is one of the best players on this roster, right? Like, as an individual. So, right before champs is a huge risk, but it's also kind of the best time to do it in a way, because I mean, it's at the end of the split or at the end of the season. Nothing else has been working. And despite the fact that I would have, if I'm a coaching member of the coaching staff, probably just stuck with the same exact roster, especially because GodRx is just so like stinking individually talented, regardless of how his actual like KD numbers have plummeted since online. But in a way, I think it's kind of perfect timing. Whether it's too little, too late, I feel like we've seen a lot, like just this past weekend, we saw it with Optic. We've seen it previously with Toronto and Kleenex. We saw it with Awakening joining the Mutineers. Like, we've seen a lot of teams be really revitalized by bringing someone new onto their lineup to kind of just inject something else, like something different. So if it works, they're going to look really, really good alongside some of the other roster changes that we've seen this year, honestly. As to whether it works, we'll find out at champs. Who knows?
We have seen examples this season of roster changes that have been very successful and roster changes that have not been so successful. So who knows where this will land. I will say this, though. It was refreshing to hear the honesty from Saint and the assistant coach. I really apologize. His name escapes me at the moment.
His first name is Jake, but I think it's like
yeah,
Reppin,
his gamer
JP.
tag.
Yeah,
Reppin and Saint were very honest in that video, and also Saint went so far as to answer questions on Reddit. Like one of the things that he mentioned was, "Listen, Jerome is still going to get paid." Something from champs. He is still pivotal to the success of this team, particularly on LAN. If not for the early push from this team in the regular season before the league went online, we would not be in a position to even be able to compete. Even though every team makes the playoffs, they're still in a favorable position, in part because of GodRx's efforts early on in the season that saw many points accumulated for this team. So they even went so far as to say if the team flames out in the first round of the playoffs and goes 0-2, GodRx would get all of the money that he would have received had he played. So Exceed would basically forfeit his playoff salary. So there's a little bit of a percentage structure, or however it's going to work. He's basically going to get paid, which is good to hear.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the Rokkr's decision, I think their transparency has been awesome. Honestly, like it's been really, really great to see. Putting yourself out there on Reddit after what is looking to be like a pretty unpopular roster change right now is basically like you're putting yourself out there. It's not a position I would want to be in. I'm sure it's not a position they want to be in, but the fact that they actually did it is actually really impressive to me. And excuse me. I also think that it is really important to make it clear that GodRx is going to get paid.
Yes.
Right? Because like we're talking about someone who before we went online was an he was looking like an MVP candidate. Like he was insane. The last LAN that they played at was when they made finals against the Empire in LA. And they looked really good. He looked great. And he was shaping up. Like people were like, oh man, he's going to be one of this league's MVPs on the year. And obviously that has not happened since going online. But I think it's important that they, A, like really credited him for that. And B, are going to make sure that he's going to get paid for it.
Absolutely. So Easy Mac, who you have seen on this program previously and also is the analyst for the Atlanta FaZe, he always makes his statistics public. He actually tweeted about GodRx's KDA on all 3 modes, on LAN versus online. And I'm not saying this as a dig to GodRx and flaming him in any way, shape, or form. I'm just presenting the statistics for you as an indication of why one of the reasons might have been for the Rokkr to make this change. So on hardpoint, on LAN, he was 1.27. Online, he was 1.08. SND, it was 1.45 on SND on LAN. Incredible. Went down to 1.11 on line. And Dom, 1.25. He actually went sub 1 online to 0.92. So yes, there were many people who regressed from LAN to online. He's definitely not the only one and may not even be the example of the worst case, but this definitely factored in. That and speed, I think that Saint really hammered that point home. And you mentioned something interesting in a previous episode. I think this was a couple months ago. Whenever we bring up the Rokkr, we always talk about how Saint is a good game planner. Saint is somebody who always is able to read the game very well. But he also had the feeling that his team was always complete no matter what, right? Like, and he even said it in the video. He wanted to make this team of 5 work as best as possible. He wanted them to stay together through thick and thin. But after the last weekend, and honestly, in the last several weeks tournaments of results that they've played in, they haven't collected very many points at all. So they've had very disappointing results time and time again. So it was almost as if it was like the point of no return, a last resort ditch effort. And that's why we're seeing the change.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I definitely think they really wanted it to work. But yeah, over their past events, like they have not scored points since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events ago.
Okay.
And it was 10. Yeah. And that tells you how well they were doing up front, right? Because the 5th offline event was the Los Angeles homestand, and that was the last offline event that we had. And that's where they scored 30 points. And then we have, 10, 10, and then 0 for the rest of the season. So it only just continued to decline, which is really frustrating. Like I said, one of the most frustrating things going into this weekend is that, like, at the beginning of the year, if you see FaZe Rokkr as like your first group match, right, you're going to be like, oh man, this is going to be great. Like, it's just going to be gunfight after gunfight. And early on in the season, it looked like the Rokkr were one of the only teams that could keep up with FaZe in gunfights, and GodRx was a huge part of that. And we haven't seen any of that since they went online. Like, none of it.